Hello, everybody. HAPI Talks is back. I hope everyone's having a good Tuesday evening. Usually we don't start this early, but we have a lot of things happening this week. So we're going to open up. HAPI is officially opening up in the UK on Friday at 7:30 BST time. Okay. And so that's 5:30 if you're in the United States on the Eastern on EST time. But we're opening up again on the in London, the UK, all of Europe, this Friday, August 28th, if I can get my dates together, August 28th at 7:30 BST time. And if you're interested in getting tickets for that, if you're watching us from across the pond, you can go to iloveblackfilms.com, and that's love, LUV, and get your tickets. We have another screening in America on Saturday at 7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, the important things about these screenings and why it's a really good idea that you can get the DVD and you can stream and all that stuff, but the screening is really important because afterwards, when you're raw with your emotions from HAPI, you can just ease right into the panel discussion. And we have some cast members that are asking questions. And, because there's things that after you see this, you're going to definitely, want to know the answers to. And so it's nice because when you get your ticket during the screening, you get to actually, get private access to the cast. And this time we have some really good people coming up every week. It is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We have both Dr. Jeffries. Yes, that's Rosalind Jeffries and Leonard Jeffries. Dr. Professor Smalls. So I'm not going to even tell any more names. We're going to announce them all tomorrow. So make sure you just go to hapifilm.com and get your ticket. All right. So we're just going to get to it. I am so excited to have our next guest come and chat with us. If you've seen HAPI, you know who she is, or you might have read her book, Birth of a Nation. But if you have not, this is a good chance for you to get to know Dr. Jacqueline Battalora. Yay. I had to get some applause like King Simon. Hey, Dr. Battalora, how are you doing?
Good. I'm great, Felicia. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming on. What I meant to ask you when you were in the green room, what is, that's Chicago behind you?
It is, I'm in Chicago.
Okay, yeah, nice. All right, so we're just gonna get right into it. Before we get started, can you just tell us a little bit, let our audience know just who you are? Okay, Dr. Battalora, can you hear me? Oh, okay. I don't know if she can hear us or not. Oh, she's going slow. Let me see. I'm gonna try to remove her and then bring her back in. You know what? See, this is the great thing. We just had a storm here in New York City, so I don't know. Mm-hmm. Dr. Battalora, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you were going in and out, but now I can hear you.
Oh, okay, beautiful. All right, so just tell the audience who you are, what you do.
Sure. Well, I'm a professor of sociology at St. Xavier University. I went to law school at Toledo, University of Toledo College of Law, and I thought I was going to be a corporate lawyer. Came to Chicago to practice law and pretty quickly realized I was interested in ideas about law rather than although I liked the paycheck, than the practice of law. So I applied to a PhD program at Northwestern and then pursued a PhD. And I've really been very interested in the ways in which law creates human difference. And so that's really been the focus of my work. And then when I was at Northwestern, and this was 98, 99,
okay. I think she's freezing up on us for
a stop. He was shot and killed unarmed, the same story that's just all too familiar today. And actually the week before Mark was killed, a woman, unarmed, Black, same situation, LaTanya Haggerty had been killed. And I thought when those happened back to back like that, I thought the city was going to be on fire. I just thought people were going to say, no way. But they didn't. But I couldn't shake it. And so I went, after getting my PhD and having a law degree, I became a Chicago police officer
Wow. Okay. How long were you in the force? Oh, okay.
Had these occurrences of Black and brown bodies being killed.
Okay.
And so I worked for CPD for a number of years before then pursuing my academic career.
Okay. 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 You have any problems hearing me, Dr. Battalora?
I can hear you.
Okay. All
Are
right.
you having trouble hearing me?
Yeah, you faded out for a second, and now you disappeared on me.
Okay.
Okay, wait, you're back, and we're going to make this happen. See, this is such a good interview that no one wants us to have it. So, okay, so let's just get to it. So, why would a white person like yourself challenge white supremacy?
Yeah, well, because when I went to law school after undergrad, because I believed the stories about this country, about what makes it great, right? Here is a nation that promises liberty and justice for all. And I believed in that and wanted to be part of that. And so I went to law school. And then as I began learning more honest US history, especially in relation to law, you know, that whole idea, like I couldn't hold it anymore. And so I've been committed to exploring whiteness and unpacking white supremacy within our law and society ever since.
Wow. How do you feel like the work that you're doing? How has it changed you? Like, were you always, were you always like this, or?
Definitely not. I have become a better white person, and I'm still.
I wasn't gonna say nothing.
Well, look, I was born into the same culture and society you were, right? And it told me that people who look like me made this country, created all its important institutions. We're great. We're wonderful. We define beauty, intelligence. Like I learned all that. And when I realized that those were productions that were falsely created in order to justify the dehumanization of people of African descent, indigenous people, and many others, how could I not be changed? I've been really committed to understanding really what it means to be white ever since. And I'm still very much exploring that,
Wow. So, like, what did your family think? Like, are your family? I mean, because you just like come home and then one day, you're like in the HAPI documentary, laying it out for everybody. But like, how did that go over?
Well, my parents for a very long time were like, "Wait, you're still studying race and still whiteness?" They didn't get it. But my father, he passed away 6 years ago, but right before he passed, he had to sit at the hospital getting fluids in him for his treatment, chemo. And while he was sitting there, he read my whole book, Birth of a White Nation.
Oh, wow.
And he called me up from as soon as he finished it. And he just said, "I just finished your book, and I want you to know how proud I am." I mean, it was one of my most, it's probably the first time I've said it without crying. It was a wonderful moment because for the first time, I knew had he lived much longer, he never would have asked me again, "You're still researching whiteness?" Because he got, yeah.
Wow. So when you talk to like other white folks about whiteness, are they like, how do they react?
Sure. Well, let me tell you something. There's two different versions of that group.
Okay.
I get hired by people mostly to talk to white people, right? People of color don't need so much the insights I bring. Maybe the history is helpful for sure, but But in terms of what the history means today, people of color are living it, you know, in a way that, that doesn't require some white woman to tell them, but white people do. And so when I'm invited to talk to those groups of white people, I have very, for the most part, really good receptions. Sometimes, for example, when I've been, I'm trying to remember her name. She used to be on Fox, and then Trump said something bad to her. And anyway, I can't remember her name, but she had sent in some journalists to videotape while I was presenting at the white privilege conference. And so I got
wait. There's a white privilege conference.
It's been around 20 years. Eddie Moore Jr. is the founder. Oh, you have to be there, Felicia.
Oh, I didn't know about this.
Oh,
okay. Yep. All right. Go ahead. The white privilege conference.
White privilege conference. So I'm presenting some of this history as a keynote speaker, and they illegally filmed it. And then I saw myself on Fox News. I actually didn't see myself. I heard myself as they were playing.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, so I got boatloads of hate mail. And so I get, you know, death threats on occasion, definitely hate mail. But for most of the white people for whom I am brought in to speak, to their company, to their agency, their non-for-profit, their university, their school, I have very positive responses from white people. But when I try to talk to white people who are my friends, that's a different deal. Or family, right? Uncle Joe, you know, everybody has an Uncle Joe. And so that's very different. Why? Because they don't have a boss who brought me in, who kind of forces them to actually learn the damn history, right? People who are my friends or my family expect me to be able to have a, you know, just a conversation of a sound bite that's going to radically teach them everything they need to know. And it doesn't work that way. I can't give you a damn sound bite that's going to help you know this history, right? We have to sit and go through it.
Yeah.
And so for me, those are the most frustrating. So I find for me, for those who are my friends who absolutely don't get this, who are white, and who are relatives who do not get this and who are white, you know, the all lives matter folks.
Yes.
So I'm talking, yeah. So I find that the best way, the more success I've had with that group is to just, when they see me, especially in public settings, and I get to see and I'm also around my friends who are of African descent, indigenous, Latinx, etc., then my family and my friends see that I have much deeper relationships with people who aren't white than they do, right? So that's in those ways I am most able to influence them. But, you know, people who don't want to sit and actually learn enough to change, there's not a lot that can be done.
Yeah. And, you know, when you've had these conversations, has there any, you know, because there's one thing to like hear it and to sometimes to hear it is really painful. You know, I know it is for me when I you know, have to hear the facts about what has happened. I mean, definitely living in it, you know, but hearing it, you know, but in terms of action, is there anything that they do, or do they like contact you later and say how did they, you know, how did it move them to action? You know, like, you know this information, but it's moved you to action. So,
right.
You know,
well, I'm always telling people that there's nowhere not to start, right? Like it can feel overwhelming because whiteness it's everywhere in everything and in all of us, right? And so it can feel overwhelming, but that also means that there's nowhere not to start. So we all have spheres of influence, and we all just have our own selves, right? And so I encourage people to like pay attention to yourself. There's all kinds of things to do to help us grow away from white supremacy and toward a criticality of it. You know, read some history, read people of color. if you're white, especially get in an affinity group that's good critically.
Yeah.
Get involved, start going to the white privilege conference and all these other, places where you're gonna get challenged and people aren't gonna take your white shit. They're gonna name it and say,
yes,
yeah, not here, no, and you're also gonna get love and you're gonna grow.
Wow. Okay, yeah, I have to look up this white privilege conference. That sounds right up my alley, actually. Okay, so you were doing this research and you were on the force. Do you ever work with the police department, like in Chicago? Have you worked with them?
Not in Chicago, interestingly enough. I've worked with other police departments, some campus university police departments, and in other states, I've worked with police departments, but not in Chicago.
Okay. And are they receptive?
Well, they invited me, so.
Okay.
And I'm pretty clear about what I'm about. That I talk about institutionalized white supremacy, and like what I hope about my work, or a critical piece that the work reveals, is that whiteness has been done to all of us. It's not my fault. It's not my grandparents, my great grandparents, and all of us are just stuck with a society that's built on white supremacy, and so it means we live it differently, very differently, much more materially painful. For people excluded from whiteness than white people, for sure. But I think when people hear the history, it makes it just so clear that it's not personal, right? The cause of this inequality, this racial inequality, you didn't do it. None of us did it, but we can all really do something about it. So some of the defensiveness that white people typically manifest can really diminish.
Yeah. And why do you think white people are defensive? And I know you don't speak for all white folks.
Yeah, but, for sure.
But why do you think that they're so defensive? When you say things, when you're just speaking the truth.
Well, whiteness equips us. I'm so sorry for my pooch. That's my dog, everyone.
Yeah.
Whiteness guides us to behave that way. And it's just like white fragility, that Robin DiAngelo has so brilliantly articulated. Whiteness creates the expectations that white people have, and that cause us to respond defensively, because we're provided whiteness generation after generation. Provides us with this sort of cushion of protection, of being seen as the ones who matter. I mean, literally, we've been made the ones who matter as a matter of foreign policy, right? And so that creates expectations generation after generation. And so that's where that defensiveness comes from. That's where what creates the context for white fragility to get manifested.
Okay. So after, so you went to law school, then you were on the force, and then you came out of that and you studied, and you started really studying history in a real way, and you wrote a book, Birth of a White Nation. Yeah. So in that, in the book, you refer to the term, the creation of white people. Can you just elaborate on what that means?
Well, sure. But prior to a specific moment in time in colonial North American history, if you look in the legal record of English colonial law, you will not see a single reference to anyone called a white person. Not one. Because white people didn't yet exist. After 1681, in Maryland and Virginia, you'll start to see a slew of laws passed that reference this entirely new group of humanity called white people. Before white was asserted as a group of people, what you'll see are references to English and other Christians, or just Christians, or they'll, in the criminal record specifically, they'll reference one's nation of origin, the Dutchman, the Irish woman, for example. But nowhere is there anyone called a white person.
Yeah, and I have to say, when the first time I started working with HAPI, and I was looking at it, and you said that, I was like, who is this white woman? Because like, you literally lay it down. For all of you that have not seen HAPI, I don't understand why you have not seen it yet. You've got to watch this film, because the through line of like all the things that you're saying, you build upon this whole, like the beginning of like where we are now in America. It's like a nice little trail to that. All right. So now in, the birth of this like new nation, what role did the politics and the economics play in it?
Well, that was the core of all of it. It was the impetus. It was the driving force. Look, white people lawmakers don't typically invent an entirely new group of humanity unless it's to serve a purpose, right? Or to respond to particular needs. So the answer to why they bothered to invent this new group of people is because there was a massive rebellion that engulfed the colony of Virginia for well over a year. And in this rebellion, people of African descent and people of European and English descent were all united against the 1%, the ruling elite. And they also retaliated against Native Americans. So we can't hold up Bacon's rebellion as this model of how we want to be, because the first phase of it was a complete slaughter of indigenous people. The second, I know, too bad, right? Because we need a model historically, right, of something to hold up. The second phase of it, though, was this unified front against the ruling elite. And so when the ruling elite finally, after well over a year, they finally put down the rebellion, but it was only after England sent in troops. Like, it was a really huge rebellion. And so when they finally put it down, and here I rely heavily on the research of Theodore Allen. And what he reveals to us is that the ruling elite in Virginia communicated to the legal oversight authority in London, who had the oversight over the laws of all the English colonies. And they told the ruling elite in Virginia, said, hey, don't worry about this. We've got it under control. And they explicitly said that we intend to deploy a divide and conquer strategy. And it's only after they expressed that we now see white people. White people are asserted, and the entire social context of the colony is radically transformed. Now, here's an important piece. Prior to the assertion of this new group of people called white people, persons of African descent and persons of English descent who worked on the same plantation, they were treated the same. They lived daily life the same. They ate together, they slept together, they worked together. There was no hierarchy or division on plantations. Persons of African descent were claimed as enslaved, which is a big difference. And persons of European descent, the masses of laborers, came as indentured servants, which was for a term of years. So that's a huge difference that we can't overlook. And at the same time, we know that it was not at all uncommon for there to be free people of African descent. So some were able to purchase their freedom because they could have side jobs. You work all day on the plantation, and then you had skills that you could use to accumulate resources to buy your freedom, that of others. That was the number one route to freedom for persons of African descent. And the second way was through wills and trusts of plantation owners. They freed those who they held as enslaved. And so free men of African descent and free English men had the same rights and privileges as a matter of law, the same. Black men could vote, and they did. They could own enslaved persons of African descent. Some did. They could own European indentured servants. They did, etc.
So now, wait, when you were saying the difference between the enslaved Africans and indentured people that came over. Now, were the indentured people also brutalized and whipped and stuff like that? Or, I mean,
Yeah, they began to be. Part of what gave rise to the rebellion was heightened mistreatment of persons who were indentured and enslaved. Their treatment just generally got much worse. And the reason for it is that up until about the 1660s, there was always a readily available labor supply from England. England had a population boom throughout that period. And so there were tons of people who couldn't work, couldn't find jobs, who would get scooped up into workhouses or in prisons because it was a crime to be poor. So they would get, and they would get sent over to work via a term of indenture. So when that ended, and it ended around the 1660s, what the plantation owners were absolutely panicked about how they're going to have the labor supply they need to get all the work done of tobacco farming, because it's incredibly labor intensive. And so what they began to do was to impose really harsh punishments on the people who labored for them, whether as enslaved or indentured. And they added bunches of years to one's term of indenture for really minor infractions. And they began imposing whippings and other much harsher treatment. So that's part of what led to Bacon's Rebellion in the first place, was this just heightened harsh treatment.
Okay. What was Bacon's name? I mean, where was he? Yeah.
Nathaniel Bacon in Virginia. And he actually was among the, he wasn't elite, but he wasn't bad off. He imagined himself being in the House of Burgess in Virginia, but he was disgusted with how the Virginia ruling elite failed to respond violently to Native Americans who he believed had killed 3 of his neighbors' indentured servants.
Okay. Oh, there's some similarities here, Dr. Battalora. Right? He was just, got fed up and he moved into action. Okay. So going back to the laws. So the law of coverture.
Yeah.
What role did that play? Well, first of all, what is the law of coverture? And then what role did it play in building America?
Sure. Well, the law of coverture grew out of feudal England, first of all. And so when the English came over to, move out indigenous people and establish colonies in North America, they brought the law of coverture with them. And so what it did was establish relations between men and women. And it's sort of famously described by the famous English barrister Blackstone, who describes the law of coverture in this way, which, by the way, is established in and through marriage. And so he says, in marriage, the 2 are made one, and the one is the man. And literally, as a matter of law, that's what happened. As soon as she said, I do, and any legal presence she may have had transferred to her husband. So she couldn't enter a contract. She couldn't sue. She had no right to her own wages. She couldn't create a will or trust on her own behalf. And if she were sexually assaulted, her husband had the claim against the assailant. Literally no legal recognizable presence. Of course, so I know you're thinking, well, why the hell would anyone get married?
I was like, why get married? Like, after this is laid out, I'm thinking I'm not going to get married.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Except here's the problem, is even though the law of coverture, while it was officially established in and through marriage, it poured over into the society as a whole. And it influenced how women were treated generally. So in other words, so women weren't recognized in courts of law. Women weren't invited to be part of establishing contracts. So the result of coverture is that a woman needed a man in order to engage in the most basic of transactions required for survival.
Oh. Okay.
Okay. Just like we're acknowledging the passage of the 19th Amendment, right? So that Seneca Falls, they were still fighting against coverture. They were challenging. So the law of coverture is deep in this country still, and we're still trying to work our way out of it. So it's not something that's purely of the past. We still have bits of it with us.
Okay, but in that time, when it came over from England, Black women, we were not we were not part of that. I mean, like no one even looked at us as human, you know, in terms of like, so this was literally just a law for like
the 19th Amendment. Oh, the 19th Amendment for sure. I was going to say, the one thing that is so extraordinary, I think, about the history that I tell in Birth of a White Nation is that African-American women and men during this brief period, and in particular for those who could get out of slavery, they really had the same rights and privileges as an English person of the same class. And so, right? But of course, by the time the United States becomes the United States, this country is deeply invested and invested in white supremacy and the degradation of persons of African descent, indigenous people, and frankly, everyone seen as not white.
Okay. Okay. You know what this is? I mean, this is so much. I can imagine when you're sitting, you know, and having these conversations with other people, with other white folks, you know, I don't know how, I mean, does anybody ever just get up and like walk out? Has anyone ever done that? You know, when you're talking, I mean, it's a lot for me to hear as a Black woman, but I could just imagine how, you know, someone who's not ready to hear this information.
Right.
You know,
well, again, most of the time I'm invited. So generally people who are there want to be there, or their boss is there who keeps them there.
Oh, okay. Even if they feel so uncomfortable, they want to get up and walk away, they just have to sit there.
Yeah. So I haven't really had, I mean, I've had, in the local community here, I've been invited to speak, and we had some Breitbart people, you know, who showed up, but they came to try to just challenge and redirect. But, you know, I've been doing this a long time, and I can absolutely know when somebody's really asking a question or they're doing something else.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I just find you name it and move on.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'm telling you, everybody, if you have not seen HAPI, you got to check it out. And hear more from Dr. Battalora. This is nice. This is like really the behind the scenes of all the things that you say in, you know, in the piece. So let's go back to law. So the naturalization law.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Can you just you know, elaborate on that, the stipulations, you know, and the establishment of the naturalization law?
The Naturalization Law of 1790, it was passed by the very first Congress of the United States of America. So basically the founders, who then became Congress people for the founding Congress, they had to establish all the laws of this brand new nation, including laws regarding immigration and naturalization. Now, immigration, of course, addresses who can come into a country from the outside its borders. And naturalization provides the legal process one must go through when you're not born in the United States, but you want to become a citizen of it. It's called naturalization. And so our founders determined that in order to naturalize a citizen of this brand new country called the United States of America, one had to be white. The requirement of being white, and to me, it's really significant, right? Because it shows that from the very first law in colonial North America, where we first saw this group of people called white people asserted for the very first time, which was in Maryland in 1681, that idea called white people and the superiority that was assigned to it. If you look at all these laws where white people were first referenced, you just can't get away from the fact that they were imbued with a meaning of being superior to all others. And so that idea called white people and their superiority had over 100 years to deepen in the hearts and minds, institutions, and structures of what would become the United States. And so that first naturalization law of 1790 just really helps sort of drive home how normative white had become and white supremacy. And it's also noteworthy that the requirement of being white to naturalize lasted more than 150 years.
Wow.
150 years. So people who fought wars for this country, but who didn't qualify as white, you know, weren't able to access US citizenship. And this country, despite the fact that we've had laws that turn on whether one is white or not, we've never defined who's white as a matter of law.
You know, I was going to ask you, like, you know, when you said one had to be white, so if you were just like a light-skinned Black person, were you considered white? Like, I mean, was there any, you know, like, what made you white?
Right. Well, that it's a good question. And so that was thought, what it meant was that contestations over who counted as white were decided ultimately in courts of law. There's a really terrific book by E.N.F. Haney Lopez called White by Law. And he researches what were called the prerequisite cases, right? Because a prerequisite to naturalize was to first show that you're white. And so there were these legal battles, and some courts used one strategy to decide them, and other courts were using another strategy. And eventually it went to the Supreme Court, and they decided that what one set of courts was using science, although we would never count, it wouldn't count as real science today, to determine who's white. And another set of courts were using common knowledge. And of course, that was white men's common knowledge of who counted as white. And that's the version that the Supreme Court agreed with, the common knowledge.
The common knowledge
of privileged white men, really, because that's who the judges were. Decided who's white and who's not white.
Wow. You know, there, when you start looking at these things, you see that it's really not that different. You know, there's been some gains, but it's a lot of like just structural things are just still present.
Yeah. And that we're so uninformed of it too. Like, because one of the things people tell me is, you know, all we're learning is white people history. And I'm like, we're not even learning that, right? We're learning some polished, glorified, half of it missing version of white people history, right? Only the good stuff, but terrible things that we white people have done to so many people who are seen as not white. It's heartbreaking, truly heartbreaking. And you actually mentioned something, Felicia, that like how hard it is for you to hear some of this history. And I want to acknowledge that and honor that.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
I want you to know that for lots of white people who hear it, guilt is a pretty heavy thing that grows for white people. And I just know that it's not a healthy place to stay. I know that I certainly had tremendous guilt when I first learned this. And I just know that it debilitates. It does nothing to change the structures that we live in. And I just found myself so freaking disgusted with my guilt self that I literally just decided enough. I'm going to choose to be empowered by this history and this knowledge, and enough of this guilt. You know, I'm going to move.
Yeah. I mean, yes. And thank you so much for saying that. You know, I think a lot of times that's the part you're so fearful that, you know, as a Black person, you know, listening and when we see white folks, you know, feeling guilty, we're like, okay, but you feel guilty, but, you know, what are you doing? You know, like, what are you doing? You know, and so it's nice to see you doing something, you know, like you've turned it. Because I believe that we all have to stay in feelings for a little while. We have to stay in place for a little while. Yeah, because it helps to propel you to the next spot. So, yeah. Yeah, you know, I'm about to start challenging more white folks. I'm saying, listen, you guys, look, Dr. Battalora wrote Birth of a White Nation. What you doing? We got to get this going.
But you know what? I want to say this, like, I did write this book and I'm so proud of it. But really my greatest accomplishment has been just being and I'm still not by any means fully there. I still catch myself having these narratives about non-white people in my head that my culture and society have taught me. And so I don't want to pretend that I'm somehow in this land of white awareness. You know, I have not arrived.
No. We all are. No one's there.
No, we're not. And but my greatest accomplishment is when I'm just able to see the full humanity of people who aren't white. You know, like let me give another example. Like I had when I watched what happened to George Floyd, and I was not emotionally removed, but he felt like my child. You know? Like when I felt that, I just knew that so much of what whiteness taught me, like to not care about him, to not see him as mine, my people. That was a big moment for me. Like I realized how much knowing this history and doing this work has helped me grow. And I got after the murder of George Floyd, I received hundreds of emails from white people, hundreds of them. What do I do? What do I do? And because I, for the first time, George Floyd's not the first person of African descent that we've seen these killed, at the hands of those tasked with serving and protecting. And so that it felt like my humanity that whiteness has very much damaged has been significantly repaired for me. And I knew that for much of my life, I too would have asked, what do we do? What do we do? But I didn't have to ask that anymore because I knew the answer. Because the answer for me when I felt what I felt watching that was freaking anything and everything to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
Like every African-American mom and dad whose son or daughter has been lost like this, you do anything and everything to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah. 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 Okay. Neither one of us will be crying during this interview, Dr. Battalora. That's I'm just going to put that right out there. Because that was really we're gonna move on. So the elite. Let's go back to the elite.
Yeah.
How did they benefit from the divided labor workforce, and how did the workforce become divided? You kind of touched on it a little bit.
Sure. Okay. Well, after Bacon's Rebellion, right? Because look, Bacon's Rebellion represented the unification of laborers from Africa and from Europe, those who worked on plantations, those who were small farmers. Like all of these people were pissed off at the ruling elite because the masses, the 99%, found themselves treated worse under worse conditions at the very time when a very small number in the colony were becoming filthy rich. And so the ruling elite knew that unification posed a threat to them, which was manifest in the rebellion itself. So they learned from that. And so again, they communicated this intent to divide and conquer. So what they did was through the invention of white people, they divided laborers into those that are white laborers and those that are not white laborers. And this group, the white ones, they gave a privileged status, right? Imbued, you can see in the very first laws that assert white people that they are presumed to be superior. And this group, the laborers who are not seen as white, prior to this moment, both of these groups were at the same place in the social hierarchy, right? So we have the 1% at the top, and then this was the bottom of society. But now, with the crafting of these laws and the assertion of white people, they stripped people of color from that place in society, and they dug out a new bottom to society, and they tossed people of African descent and members of Native American tribes within it. And so they began the initial divide of the masses. And truthfully, we white people have served the purpose of dividing laborers ever since. Think about if you know your labor history throughout this country. And it's no longer the 1% that even has to do it to us. Now white laborers will do it all by themselves.
Yeah. So the politics in the U.S., like how have they been used to restrict non-white people from holding positions? Like from the beginning. Yeah.
Really, how has it not? Right? It has the assertion of privilege to white people has given access and acceptance to white people from day one in this country, and served as a rationale to exclude people who aren't white. Right? Look, if you're going to have people in office, and they're white, and we know that white people are superior, then those are the ones that we want. So just the hierarchy that race function, and let me also just say this to listeners, that white people, this idea called white people, was asserted some 100 years before Thomas Jefferson wrote Notes on the State of Virginia, and before any of those naturalists, those pseudo-scientists who ranked humanities. So the concept of race happened at least 100 years later, right? So we had these, white people were invented 100 years before. So I just want us to see that to even say things are race at that time is not so accurate. Race didn't even become a concept that really applied to humans for almost 100 years.
Wow. And how long was Bacon's Rebellion?
It lasted a little over a year.
Okay.
1676, excuse me.
Okay.
Through
wow. All right. So they craft this plan, I mean, relatively quickly in terms of like how to, to shut down, to shut down the rebellion. This is, when you were talking about how someone from here, sent a telegram, was it telegrams back then? No.
Letters. Letters.
Yeah, letters. They, sent a letter saying, okay, we're going to, we have a way that we're going to divide and conquer. Who were those people?
Well, those were the English ruling elite. They were of the privileged class in England.
So we don't have names, though. We don't have like specific names.
Oh, sure. We could look up names. It's in the historical record. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but they're actually and you get lots of this information is actually now online. So you can dig into the especially in Virginia and Maryland, actually, the Burgess, Burgess, and if you look in, you'll see all their names, because the people who held political power were the same people who held economic power, right? Marx had it right. The two are the same, and so you'll see names. Not hard to look up.
Okay. Now, how does the ratio between the men and women influence the new laws?
Sure. Yeah, well, in both the colonies of Maryland and Virginia, there was an incredible gender imbalance. There was about anywhere from 8 to 12 men for every woman in the colony. Wow. Yeah, and so women were a hot commodity, as you can imagine. And so another thing that we know is that if you can remember that gender imbalance, and then we had not an uncommon practice of men of African descent marrying English women, right? The marriages were permitted, and we know that among the masses, among the 99%, they were accepted. There's not even a piece of anecdotal evidence that suggests otherwise, that those marriages were viewed in a negative way. But they were contested by the ruling elite, and they crafted this law in 1664, the lawmakers in Maryland did, that punished any English woman who married a, quote, enslaved Negro man. And the punishment was serious. She was enslaved for the duration of her husband's life, and any children that they have were enslaved. Oh. That law of 1664 was the precursor to a body of law that we call anti-miscegenation law. And anti-miscegenation laws were an invention of colonial North American lawmakers. They didn't come to us from England like most laws did. So that always tells us something about the needs and desires of those who wielded power. And anti-miscegenation law can be described as laws that made it illegal for white people to marry always persons of African descent, but sometimes various others. For example, California's anti-miscegenation law prohibited white people from marrying Mexicans, Native Americans, persons of African descent, Asians, and people from the Pacific Island.
But here in America, it was just Black folks.
Oh no, every anti-miscegenation law passed in North America, every one of them prohibited from marrying people of African descent. Some territories or states had anti-miscegenation laws that also prohibited white people from marrying various others, depending on the demographics.
I hate to say that they covered all their bases, but they covered all their bases.
Right. And you look at the function of anti-miscegenation law, right? Because here's where you see coverture and other means of control kind of converging, because anti-miscegenation law functioned to make white women exclusive to white men as a matter of law. But when you fold in enforcement practices, we find that rarely, even though lots of white men were in technical violation of anti-miscegenation law, rarely were they prosecuted. And so when they were prosecuted, this was the line crossed, that they dared to treat their non-white significant other in a way deemed only appropriate for a white woman in public. That's the line that could get them prosecuted. But so when we look at anti-miscegenation law, we can see that it functioned to make white women exclusive to white men, and make all women, when you fold in enforcement practices, it made all women available to white men. And it located patriarchal power exclusively among and within white men. And so white women then became this commodity, right? Yeah. White women became a commodity that could be used to help support this whole idea called white people, right? It was a trade for white men. Yeah, you buy into this white people thing, and here's one of the goodies that you get: exclusive access to white women. And if you don't want white women, well, we'll let you have that too.
Wow. Okay. Why is the struggle in obtaining strong relationships between African descent and whites in this country? Why is there a struggle? I mean, in your opinion, what's like the biggest obstacle?
We live in the same moment, radically different lives, depending upon whether one is white or not white. Radically different lives, right? Like when I think about my childhood and the stuff I learned, I had a little white doll. I was given Barbie dolls, right? That they represented this ideal beauty. I went to Catholic masses where Jesus was a white guy with blue eyes, right? And I had whiteness was affirmed everywhere I looked. And so I was given this heightened, excessive self-affirmation racially all over the place. And so you contrast that with different people of color who grew up in a similar context. And that's why we have colorism within lots of groups, where you have a privileging of being lighter skinned, and there's the psychology of it is sad and harmful and terrible.
Yeah.
But that's why because look, I'm so honored to have to get to be a part of HAPI, and I never take for granted that my white self is a part of a distinctly African piece, or community, or whatever it is. Like I know that it's a real honor to be asked. And so, and I know that because I am shocked when a person of color extends kindness to me, because when I know the history that I know, it just seems like people should hate white people. non-white people.
Yeah.
You know, like the generosity of humanity on the part of people of color throughout this country's history is truly extraordinary.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that keeps us going. You know, it's not in the makeup of who we are, you know, to be anything other than, you know, than generous and loving and all that good stuff. Yeah.
We have a lot to learn from you.
Yeah. You know, I'm telling you, you did a good job in HAPI. And if you guys haven't seen it, you guys need to see it. You need to see it. You need to see HAPI.
Yes.
Okay, I have so many other questions, but he's like texting me questions too. Everyone's just like this, you know, with this interview. So he wants us to go back to the laws, the miscegenate. I can't even say it.
I know it's a mouthful. Anti-miscegenation.
Miscegenation laws. So he just wants you to just elaborate a little bit more on those.
Sure. Well, the anti-miscegenation, I really harp on people understanding anti-miscegenation laws. Just as informed people in this country, that body of law is something we should know about. And here's why. First of all, it was an invention of colonial North American lawmakers, which is always a flag should go up for us. Secondarily, it is within anti-miscegenation law where we see for the first time in colonial North America, any reference to a group of anybody called white. So it's within anti-miscegenation law. Third, anti-miscegenation laws, again, laws that prohibited white people from marrying always people of African descent, sometimes others, lasted more than 300 years in this country. 300 years, literally shaping what we all look like. Not only that, but how we interact, even today, especially when it comes to dating and social intimacy. It is still influencing the people of this nation. And it was in 1967, anti-miscegenation law was finally struck by the U.S. Supreme Court when it in Loving versus Virginia, when it was found to violate the 14th Amendment.
Okay. All right. Wow. Okay. So going back to economics, well, socioeconomic obstacles that plague, you know, a lot of individuals in the African descent communities. Well, what are some of the socioeconomic, you know, things that are plaguing Black folks or of African descent, of the diaspora?
Yeah. Well, here's how throughout U.S. history, like we'll leave colonial North America aside for now, and that we'll just deal with U.S. history. There are thousands of laws that, by virtue of law, required that white people be given advantages. For example, U.S. housing law, right, passed in 1937, I think that's the date. It devoted billions to the construction of housing. And as a matter of policy and law, it required that contractors who are constructing housing, that if they're going to build a house that is going to be sold to a white person, it required that the entire development be white only. We actually we increased racial segregation in our country as a result of that law. Furthermore, as a matter of law and policy, any house, there was funding made available for the construction of housing for non-white people, but it required that less money be given per house and more money to be given for a house for white people. So we're still living with the consequences of that racial inequality imposed by law in the past. Why? Because you have substandard construction houses that, of course, haven't increased in value to the degree that the house built with higher standards of construction have appraised. And so the inequality that those laws first worked to create, even though the laws now have been changed, the inequality has persisted. And in fact, the racial inequality has only increased. The gulf between us has only grown bigger, and it never will stop getting greater until we actually address reparations. Because here's what we've done. We imagine this. Imagine that we are going to play the game of Monopoly, okay? And I get to start, and I'll go around, I don't know, 10, 15 times, because there's a rule that says Felicia has to just plant herself on this place. And by the way, I happen to own that place, so I'm going to charge you a little every time it's your turn. Okay, but now we'll remove the law. Now you can start moving. You can roll the dice and start moving around. So it's all equal now, right?
No.
I don't think so. I own half the damn board. Not only that, but not only did I get to buy a whole bunch of stuff or just steal it from Native Americans or kill Native Americans to take it, not only that, but I established every institution of this nation for my people to advance my people, to support my people, everyone from lending to Hollywood to education, housing, on and on, everything. And so those who say, well, Dr. Battalora, all these laws that you reference, they're gone now. And I'm like, yeah, they are, but the inequality they created, because we have never confronted seriously reparations, they will only persist.
Have you been asked to have any conversations about reparations or to join any think tanks, about reparations?
Not officially. I've had some informal conversations. There's actually a group who has done some work for a number of years out of, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. Y'all would know it. It's a wonderful little town in North Carolina. University of North Carolina, Asheville.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. I knew I would come back. So there's a group there that for years has really grappled with reparations. And I read something, I think recently, that they actually passed something at a governmental level. So there's hope. And I need to go look and see what they've done, because I was so excited to hear that, people are actually doing something, because I know people who are personally doing something, like people who, some white women who do racial justice work are sort of have made a personal commitment to, X amount of my funds goes to groups. And so, we have tried to do things on an individual, but we need to do it everywhere, right? And the truth of the matter is we have so many systems in place that could be used to do that. For example, any sale of a home by a white person, there could be a fee that goes into supporting housing for people of African descent and indigenous people. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be rocket science, and to help curb. It's one of the questions I think Taki wanted to ask. When all these white people are moving in to neighborhoods, they now decide
the relationship between gentrification and white supremacy.
And just to link this with reparations, that to help ensure that longstanding communities, in particular longstanding, but truthfully any communities of people of color that are getting pushed out, we need policies in place that will ensure that doesn't happen. And we already have sort of models of what that could look like. Like in Cook County, Illinois, we have senior freezes. So your taxes don't go up after you reach a certain age, they get locked in. And so there is no reason we couldn't do freezes for people who have been in a community for a long time to make sure they can afford to stay. Anyway, there's a million things we could do.
Yeah. Free utilities for life, no matter if you move from house to house.
Absolutely.
But, go back in history in terms of this conversation about reparations. Has there ever been a conversation about reparations prior to the last 20 years? Even with I
don't know that I don't know the answer to that, because you kind of want to. I don't know. I would be surprised if some of the elites, intellectual elites who really tried to push white America, W.E.B. Du Bois, yeah, I'd be surprised if there wasn't something. Oh, I am so sorry. If there wasn't,
what's your dog's name? Yeah.
Come here, girl. If there wasn't something at some time said about it, but I haven't read it, and I can't remember too well. But I did want to. Could you pose the question again
about the socio-economic struggles that are impacting?
No, the neighborhoods question. The link, I think, the link between.
Yeah. So, is there? I was asking you. Actually, is there a connection between white supremacy and gentrification?
Absolutely, there is, because what is the result of gentrification, right? White people dominate. People of color typically are pushed out, right? Look, the history of invention of white people reveals that white means two things. It means divide, right? We function divide the masses, the 99%, and secondarily, it means dominate. Like when you look at how the invention of white people functioned from its very creation, we've served two purposes: divide and dominate. And so when you look at so what's the effect of gentrification? Dominate, right? People then are put in a position of domination, and people, typically people of color, are subjugated, pushed out, have to leave. So anytime you have those results, to me, the answer is yeah, of course. And truthfully, Felicia, I don't know anywhere that white supremacy isn't. Right? I like to use negative for some reason, but it's just everywhere. It's part of the common practices, the common sort of things that we see play out in our cities and our towns. It's all white supremacy is always a piece of it, because we haven't done what we need to create new institutions that weren't fundamentally birthed through the presumption of the superiority of white people. Maybe we're in a moment where these alternative policing to the institution of law enforcement that we've only known to, post slavery to control people of African descent. Maybe the have new institutions that do that. Maybe.
So okay, and you actually talk about that in HAPI, about that there's nothing we can talk about without talking about white supremacy, because the nation was founded upon that. Can you talk a little bit about the Wall Street and white supremacy connection?
Well, it's a connection that's in from Wall Street to Main Street, as who was our politician who was always saying that, Wall Street to Main Street. So the 1% who played the most significant role in crafting laws that create white people and then subjugated significantly persons of African descent within the colony of Virginia and then Maryland. They were the elite class who then evolved into the ruling elite who were significant in the establishment of the United States from the moment of its founding, right? Because we know that part of how people were encouraged to be part of the American Revolution was the beautiful rhetorical claims of liberty and justice for all kind of stuff that most of us learn in grade school. And yet it was totally disingenuous even from the very beginning, because the founders knew they were only going to give the vote to men who owned property, right? So even significant groups of white men were left out of the promise of the United States. And so the elite then established this nation that ensured their economic control and success, and that group is what enabled Wall Street. That group is what created the structure that elevation of wealth we see reflected on Wall Street.
Okay. Oh, okay. I don't know if I'm frozen or if she's frozen. Dr. Battalora? All right. Just as we're waiting for her to come back, don't forget to get your HAPI tickets. They're on sale. We're having a screening on Saturday at 7 p.m. It's going to be good. We have a private chat that will occur after you watch the movie. You bought the ticket, so you get access to the free chat. I'm going to give a shout out to everybody in the comments section. It's our regulars. I hope you guys are having a good evening, good conversation. We're just waiting for Dr. Battalora to come back and join us, and we're going to take some questions. So if you have any, just post them in here so I can, ask her to elaborate. Also, I don't know if you guys had a chance to check out Ifudishi. He was on the show last week, and he talked about all the symbols of our T-shirts and stuff. And we had one of a brown HAPI. And so I want to show you guys the blue HAPI, just in case you want to go and check out our merchandise store. There you go. Okay. All right. We're just all doing some little fillers until Dr. Battalora comes back on. But check out the merchandise. We have a lot of stuff. We have the DVDs. We have the HAPI DVD, the Tekken. We have the Nubia DVD. And also, I wanted to just thank everyone for all the kind words that you guys have been saying after you viewed the film, and you send us notes, or you go into the HAPI Film and you sign up for the newsletter, and you're sending, all of us good stuff. So I think Dr. Battalora is trying to come back in. Let's go and check with her. A lot of times with this storm going on, we know how the internet can be a little shady. So does anybody have any HAPI questions that can be answered? Any little questions? Yes, I heard, yes, Ifudishi, he is the man. He's the representative. Yes. Also, we have some also. We're also premiering at the, in the UK on Friday at 7:30 BST time. So if you're overseas, across the pond, and you want to check us out, go to I Love Black Films, and that's Love LUV to get your tickets. Okay, I see her almost in the green room, so hopefully she'll come back. So if you have any questions, just type them in at the bottom, and so we'll get that right out to you. And who is in the chat? We have a lot of cool people. Stay Balanced, Michelle Jewell. These are all of our people that always come and check us out. Thank you. Gail, Laura, I think she's coming back. Andre, Brian, Dwayne. It's nice to see you guys all back. LaTanya. Oh, I think I went to school with LaTanya. Niles, nice to see you guys. Sandra, Series B. If you guys are down in New York, I'm sweating. Let me tell you, it is hot in my kitchen. I can't even put my fan on. If you guys are down in Harlem, you got to come to 125th and check out Series B. She has some beautiful dresses and beautiful jewelry. All right, I think she's coming back. Maybe, hopefully. Oh, we have Mr. Staples, elder from Florida. I'm so happy you were able to sign on. All right. And Gail, Right to Be Writer. Oh, there's Seed. So Seed, also known as Robert Gay, also known as Tahuti Films, is the production company that produced HAPI. So you got to go to his website, hapifilms.com. Check out all the stuff. If you've seen HAPI and you saw all those beautiful images, it's all Seed, Seed and his wife. And so check out their website, hapifilms.com. Check that out. So the name of the business in Harlem, it's, I don't know if Series B has a name other than her name, Series B, but if you're walking down, she vends usually next to Infudici if you're down on 125th, in between, I think it's Adam Clayton Powell and Lenox. She's out there, and the dresses are beautiful. And, you know, while you guys are at it, if you could just like us on Instagram and subscribe to us on YouTube, trying to get our numbers up. We have a lot of really exciting things that we are looking forward to introduce to you guys. Okay, I guess she couldn't make it in there. All right, we're going to give her, oh, I'm sorry, it's Sirius B. Sirius B. Yeah, spelled Sirius B, like the letter B. And you can also check her out on Instagram under her name, Sirius B, and Facebook. So if you could please like us on everywhere, like us on YouTube, like us on Instagram, and subscribe to us, on YouTube, and like us on Facebook and Instagram. Okay, so we're gonna give Dr. Battalora maybe 2 more minutes, and then we may have to just end the interview. Okay. I know there's a storm on the East Coast, and it's like going towards the Midwest. So she might be, you know how it is, all this stuff. Oh, okay. It's hot. It's hot. I'm old and it's hot. All right. Any more questions about HAPI? Any questions about HAPI, about what we're doing, the trajectory of what we're doing? Okay. Okay, she's just texting me. She's trying to get back on. So you can also check out our merchandise at HAPI. We have you can also go in and get a digital download of HAPI if you don't want to, like wait for the DVD. You can digitally download and stream it on Vimeo. So that's one way to watch it. We really suggest that people watch the screenings, because the screenings are really good. Because after the screening, you get a ticket to see the private panel discussion. And I mean, we've had Laura Jamar, who's also in the film. We've had Dr. Battalora, Dr. Jeffries, Dr. Solange Ashby, Infudici. We've had a lot of the cast members, come in afterwards, and we have a really good conversation. It's just a very relaxed atmosphere, and your questions can get answered, but you have a plethora of elders and non-elders, that answer all the questions. Because after you see HAPI, you feel there's a lot of feelings going on, and so it's a really good way to culminate it. Yeah, so she's trying, but it's not coming through. Gosh, I feel like Teddy Riley right now, not being able to get this technical piece together. All right. So we are going to just give her a couple more minutes. Maybe I can send her a different invitation and she'll be able to join. Okay. All right. So we're going to send her a new invitation, and we'll see if that works. So hopefully it works. So who would you guys like to see us talk to next? We posed this question maybe like 2 months ago, and we got a lot of good suggestions, and some of them we've actually have materialized. So if you have any people you think that if the HAPI audience would love to have a conversation with, definitely send us. You can go into our hapifilm.com, and there's an info section, and you can just leave us an email of that person. And if you have contact information, that helps as well. Okay. Oh, yes. Dr. Lawrence Du Bois, Fred Hampton Du Bois. Yes. Okay. Mr. Staples was asking, can you repeat the URL and UK viewing information for Happy Film? So yes, if you go to iloveblackfilms.com, and that's love, LUV, that will take you to our promoter, our business partner. His name is Marlon from Cush Films, and he's hosting HAPI this Friday. So it's iloveblackfilms.com, and that's love, LUV. Okay. So we're still gonna let me tell her that we sent her a new invitation. And one of the things I just want everybody to know is that we are, yes, Baba Haru. So Baba Haru is actually in HAPI, and he's been on the panel discussion. See, if you get the screening, you come to the panel discussion. Baba Haru was there with his ankh, and it was very, very enlightening. Also, if we want everyone to make sure they subscribe to the newsletter. It comes out once a month, but we have like the HAPI updates, but we also have some financial one-on-one news. We have a health tip, and actually the health tip is written by this 13-year-old boy in Georgia, Dane. And Dane sits down and he sends us lots of emails and phone calls to figure out what he's going to talk about in terms of the health piece. So we do that. And we also talk about an economic innovator from the past that's helped lay the foundation for where we are right now. And we also showcase a Black business, which is really important. So that's all part of the HAPI movement, which I hope everyone has joined. We've seen a lot of the yellow I joined the HAPI movements up on people's Facebook pages and Instagram. So we really want to thank you for that. All right. I think this is going to be it for Dr. Battalora, because I don't see her coming back. It's not even like a little pop-up of her coming back. Oh, wait. Oh, there she is. Okay, let's try it again.
All right.
Oh, Dr. Battalora.
Hey.
Okay, you can tell I'm not a DJ. I just like improvise, and that's not me.
All right.
I'm glad you came back. That's great.
Yes.
Yeah, it's always. I tell you, this little internet, everything's always, something.
I know.
So, yeah. All right. So we were talking about the connection between Wall Street and white supremacy, but also I had a question in terms of, one thing we don't talk about, and it's really prevalent right now, is this whole thing about guns. Guns.
Yeah.
Can you talk about, in colonial times, like where did Black folks sit in terms of being able to own guns, like testify against white people?
Right.
How did that? Yeah.
Well, you're referencing, it sounds like, the first bundle of laws that got passed. So remember, after Bacon's Rebellion got put down, the ruling elite pursued a divide and conquer strategy. And so here's what you see when you look into the legal record in the decades after Bacon's Rebellion. You see these bundles and bundles of laws getting passed that radically transform society. And don't forget that up until this moment, if a person of African descent and English descent on the same plantation, were treated the same. And free persons of African descent were not at all uncommon in the colonies. And free men of African descent and free European men had the same rights and privileges as a matter of law. All of that changes now because these bundles of laws gave a privileged status to those laborers seen as white, and then stripped away the rights and privileges of persons of African descent and members of native tribes. And so if you look at one of the first bundles of laws, one of them required that whites be paid certain goods upon completion of their term of service. Another law was passed that prohibited persons of African descent from being in possession of a gun or powder. Another law was passed that prohibited people of African descent from testifying against white people. That law in particular, I really spend a lot of time with, because I think I just find it just that one law, the law that prohibited white people, people of African descent from testifying against white people. What did just that one law teach white people, right? Because we're like, whoa, now we're white. What does that mean? Who knows? You know, like it must have been extraordinary. And so what did that one law teach these new people called white people about what it means to be white, right? And clearly it indicates that white people are positioned above people of African descent. And not only that, but I can treat people of African descent however I please without any fear of prosecution unless a white person wants to testify against me. And so then what did people of African descent learn about what it means to be of African descent now in the post-Bacon's Rebellion colony? Well, it means that you better be passive and submissive to these people called white people now, or else.
Yeah.
But the other thing that this law does, remember, here's what it did. It prohibited people of African descent from testifying against white people. That law to me reveals that the law itself, the legal institution itself, is aligned with the interests and perspectives of white people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of a deep thing built into the law. And this law, we see that particular law throughout U.S. history. It was used after the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, when the United States virtually doubled in size and Mexico was chopped in half. And then we had all these people who yesterday were Mexicans living in Mexico and today are Mexicans living in the U.S. and they didn't move, right? And so in those regions of the country, you see laws getting passed and courts interpreting laws to prohibit people of Mexican descent from testifying against white people. And then after 1848, when you have large numbers of Chinese coming into the West Coast to help build the Transcontinental Railroad and to pan for gold, what do we see? We see states out west and territories interpreting law and passing laws that prohibit Chinese from testifying against white people. So that law, it worked for its intended purpose, right? And it's always the 1% who are the greatest beneficiary, of course.
Yeah.
But it also privileged the masses of white people, right? Because what they got was a position of domination every time. Even if materially they didn't get something, they got a position of domination. And what else did I want to say about that? Oh, and the other sort of function of that law was to keep certain non-white groups of workers cheap and dependent labor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like those things are still happening.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's
different mechanisms, but right.
Yeah, like goal. The laws are gone, but the after effects and there's still the it's still happening. People still think that they are laws the way that everything's going down.
Right.
Yeah. If you guys have any questions for Dr. Battalora, you can please send them now. We're going to kind of wind down. So what are you doing now? Like what, with COVID and stuff happening, like what are you doing now?
Well, I'm doing lots of Zoom presentations to organizations, and I'm also I have a second edition of Birth of a White Nation that Routledge is publishing. And so I have I don't think there's a single chapter that I didn't do some changes to be honest. And then I wrote 3 or 4 new chapters. Okay. And so I'm pretty excited about that. And then I have a new book that I'm trying to write that's more for common everyday readers, not so much law history readers. Okay. And it's because I think I'm going to title it Becoming Human. And I'm going to share sort of my journey of learning what I've learned about what it means to be white.
Okay. Yeah, you got to come back
Yeah.
and share that with us. Yeah.
For sure. It would be an honor.
Yeah.
Go see HAPI, everyone.
Yes. Just gotta come see it.
Or sit at home and see HAPI, as the case may be, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking when you were talking about, you said all these, a lot of white people were emailing you like, what should we do? What should we do? And I was like, what we should do is go to hapifilm.com and check out this movie. It's the beginning. It's a good movie for everyone. It is not just, a movie just for Black folks, although, we made it and, it was a love letter to Black folks, but other people from other cultures can really get something from it. So I really appreciate you, being in the film and this, yeah. And you know what, I meant to ask you. So when like Taki called you up, like, were there any like hesitations, to be part of the film? She's frozen. Okay. All right. I think this is it with Dr. Battalora.
There
okay.
You are. I couldn't hear you anymore. Sorry, yeah. Felicia.
I know. I was just like, yeah, I was like, I think it's just winding down to the end. I just had one question in terms of when you were approached to do HAPI. Like, were you like, oh, I can't wait to do this, or were you a little hesitant, or how did that go down? Okay. All right. Okay. So we're done with Dr. Battalora. It's just the internet is crazy. All right. So we want to just thank you guys for tuning in. And could you please, everyone that can hear my voice right now and that will watch this later on tonight, could you please go to YouTube and subscribe? We are almost to 3,000 subscribers. We got to get up there. So please subscribe to us on YouTube. And also we want to, invite you to, to sign up for the newsletter. Go to hapifilm.com, hit newsletter, put your information in, and you'll, start to get your newsletter. Okay, she's right here. We're just going to have closing remarks. Okay, Dr. Battalora. I was going to just ask you, if you had anything you want to say in closing.
Oh my God. I want to say that we have
Oh, the storm today. Thank you, BB. Yes, it's a very good discussion that we're not being able to have right now. Okay, so Wake Up was asking about the HAPI available on DVD for people in other states. Yes, you can go to hapifilm.com, Wake Up, and go and hit the merchandise, and you can get HAPI film. And we also have on DVD the new Taki Grant. He also has 2 other feature documentaries. He has the Nubia, the Untold Story, the Tekken, and he has HAPI. So you can, check out both of those. I mean, all 3. You can get them in a bundle. You can get a cool T-shirt. Again, cool T-shirt. Yay! Everyone needs to get a HAPI T-shirt and support. And again, and this is it. And then we are out of here. Go to YouTube and subscribe to us. We're trying to get to 3,000 viewers. We love you guys so much. I tell you, we love getting emails from you guys. It really makes our day. Thank you so much. Please follow us on Instagram and on Facebook. And also, we have a screening August 29th. That's Saturday at 7 p.m. And we're going to have a really good discussion afterwards, a private panel. And if you get the ticket to see that, you get to be, part of the private panel. And also, we are opening up in the UK on Friday. So if you want to get a ticket there, if you checking us out from a different time zone, you can go to I Love Black Films. Love is spelled L-U-V, films.com. And you can then, get your ticket for the screening that will be for the UK at 7:30 BST on Friday. So thank you guys. And with that, I wish you love, peace, and all that good stuff. Thank you.